This is Jim Carroll, and welcome to day 3 of Hard Working Class Heroes, day 2 of Hard Working Class Heroes, the convention. You're seeing here, this is royalty. These are the princes of the music industry. They're all looking at me now, going, "Uh-oh, this is going to go badly wrong." These are the kingmakers you see up here. This is the agents panel. I'm going to start by asking each one of them, basically just kind of like introduce themselves, say a little bit about themselves and who they represent. Start with Andy at the end.
Hi, I'm Andy Clayton. I work at Coda Agency. I've been there for about 2.5 years. Do bands like Ice Age, Savages, Bastille.
Oh, you do Ice Age?
Yeah.
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. You do Savages as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Nick Holroyd from Primary Agency. I've been there 2 years now, and I look after Alt J and Azealia Banks and others.
Thank you very much. Jason, you're a returnee.
Hi, I'm Jason Edwards. I work at 13 Artists. I've been there for 2 years as well, and I look after Grimes, Spectre, Factory Floor, and others.
Thank you very much. Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Zapp at ITB. I've been there for 10 years. Worked with bands including Biffy Clyro, Editors, Cortinas, and The View.
Yeah. You've got a track record with Irish bands as well, don't you?
Yeah, I work with 2 at the moment, Round's Pocket Radio and Funeral Suits. In the past, I've worked outside of Ireland with The Frames, also with Mundy and a few other acts.
Cool. Okay, great. Just a bit of housekeeping for everyone that's here. We'll talk probably for about 40 minutes or so, and then open up the questions from the floor. The panel is being filmed, so just a warning to you, and also just to let you know as well. It will be available for download afterwards. Last year when we had an agents panel, it was downloaded 77,000 times. So there's a lot of good stuff coming from these panels. Most of those were by one individual in particular. Okay, can we start with basically, I suppose, kind of a primer about agents. How did you all get to start? Like, where did you begin? What were you doing before you became an agent? Anyone pick a question up? Yeah.
I'll take this. I was just a promoter in Liverpool. Then one day I got some work experience with SJM Concerts, and then from there, working on reception, being an assistant to other promoters there, and then when I left there, I just moved into being an agent.
What about you, Steve? Where did you start?
And when I was at uni, I ran the entertainments department whilst I was studying. Left, worked for a while as an economic consultant, and loved music.
Economic consultant?
Yeah, I loved music too much, and and then managed a few bands, set up the Fly magazine.
You set up the Fly?
Yeah, I was the first editor.
I didn't know that.
Of that, and then one day, various reasons. Actually, it was to do with some Irish bands. Actually, I was outside a venue. There was a band called the Ultramontanes I helped out years ago.
I signed them.
And then I was outside a venue one day, and an A&R guy said to me, "Oh, we've signed this band. We need to book some shows for them. Would you like to help?" And that band was called the Young Offenders. And then just went from there, really. I set up my own agency, booked a few bands, found it very hard, being an independent agent. Had a band called JJ72 who started to happen, and then an agent from a major agency came in and sort of took them, because I think he promised to you could book them internationally and lots of other stuff like that. And then went to a company called Primary in 13, and then been at ITV since then. But it was primarily, I'd wanted, I think, to work in A&R, and jobs were, a lot of record companies were downsizing their A&R departments, and it just happened to be a little bit of a coincidence, but it worked out really well.
Okay. I mean, the overriding theme of this year's convention is 10 years on, what we learned, because we're celebrating 10 years of Hard Working Class Heroes. 10 years ago, do you think, this is open to all of you, do you think, the position of the agent has changed a lot in the last 10 years? I mean, when it comes to a band, I mean, years ago it used to be a case that, say, the record label was kind of like the #1 number on their most dialed list of numbers. Do you think the agents kind of surpassed that? Do you think the agents kind of become the most important person the band has to have in their corner? Don't be shy.
I think we're definitely a big part of the team now. I mean, record sales are so low that a lot of the time bands are relying on their live revenue to kind of fund their everything really. Not in all cases, but there's definitely some bands out there that are making a hell of a lot more money out of touring now than they are out of their record deals. But I think the way the jobs change is we've kind of taken over from the A&Rs in a way, as being the ones that are by and large discovering a lot of the new music, I think. And I'm definitely finding we're advising the major label A&Rs as to what to sign, because we're kind of helping them get a fan base, helping them, you know, tour and get out there and kind of be the pre-traditional A&R people now, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like, and you mentioned there, like earlier on, but like say Ice Age, particularly Savages, for example. You know, I mean, that's a band like that, kind of like are really, really hot right now. You know, it's really taken off. They sound amazing. They sound really, really good. Yeah. Can you maybe talk me through like the process involved, how you started working with them, where the relationship began, and like how it's gone, and like, I mean, has the fact that you're booking them out led to more attention from record labels and publishers for them as well?
Well, basically, it was just a case of I think it's from just on a blog somewhere. And just online, like I use Hype Machine, which is a great tool I find, yeah, basically listened to it. You know, they obviously had at the time a load of shows booked in. Went down and watched them at the Old Queen's Head, which is just around the corner from my office, which was handy. And basically, yeah, saw it. Was amazed by how they're just so fantastic live. Like every aspect of that band, you know, the drumming, the bass, everything's just it's so on point, so tight. You know, I had to be a part of that, and instantly emailed the manager. Was like, "This is amazing." Then
were you the first agent on the scene, do you think?
I don't know. There was a hot act anyway when I already started looking at it. I don't know about whether it was whether I was the first one or not, but I now share that act with Paul Buck in our office, and we do that together. Paul was actually friends with the manager, so it was a good way to bring it, you know, in together. And I think maybe. You know, they're recording now, they're recording their album, looking to release next year. Yeah. And they did, don't know if you saw it, Jules Holland on the other night, which has obviously helped a lot.
Yeah, Jeff Barrow's going to be working on that record as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. He's been helping them.
Well, he said he was.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously stuff like that helps. And they've got a tour out in November, so that's going to, you know, definitely boost that. But I'm not so sure. You know, they haven't recorded the album yet, so then, you know, it's still early days as to whether what label they're gonna sign with, I think. I mean, sorry, what was the? No,
you've kind of answered the question in a way, because I mean, what you're kind of part of that machine is happening right now. You know, you're kind of an essential part of it. It's more kind of like how you got involved in the first place. And I want to kind of move the question on to Nick, right? Like, when do you know for a band starting out, they obviously think they want an agent right now, because they're taking Kurt Ching. If we get Nick booking us out, we're going to be playing the main stage in Glastonbury in 12 months, right? So how do you deflate those expectations? How do you, like, when you talk to a
Tell
band
about commission.
Yeah. But when's the right time for a band to approach people like you?
I guess there's no real right time. It's like if a band, usually, I mean, for me, I don't know about the other guys, but usually if a band approaches you, then it's usually not the right time. Like you need to find it on your own, and you know, just go about it in your own way. It's not if you feel like you're being forced into something, then, I mean, you don't want to feel that pressure into going into a relationship with a band. You just want to, find it on your own, and well, have people that you know and respect their opinions telling you that it's good. Yeah, that's probably.
Steve, like, you know, like, okay, we'll just take our kind of a hypothetical case. There's a hot band out there. We'll give them a name or whatever. There's a hot band out there. You suddenly take them on, you know. Maybe talk us through how you break that band through to promoters. You know, I mean, like, is it a case that they're going to be you wait till they ring you up screaming about the band, or are you on them straight away, kind of going like, I've now taken on this band X. Are you interested, or is a tour going to be put together?
Personally, I think my attitude on that differs to a few agents in the fact that I want to work with promoters who I think are into the band, like the band, and probably will work harder for them. And if once the initial wave and buzz has gone, potentially, you know, he's still interested. So quite often I'll try and stay with local promoters in numerous cities for as long as possible until it feels like the right moment that the national promoter can add to the story, really, either by offering a festival or some supports or something more. There's sometimes you can go with a promoter early, with one particular promoter, and because you've given them the band early, you know, they do come up with some things of added value for the band, but not always. So I think the timing of that moment is quite critical.
Yeah. What about you, Jason? I mean, do you find yourself working with the same promoters over and over again, or like, do you kind of try and keep an open slate? You know, I mean, say for example here in Ireland, you know, we all know that there's 2.5 big promoters. You know, there's a lot of kind of smaller ones as well. Do you have a relationship with just one of them, or do you kind of try and keep everyone happy?
Well, I think it depends on how you've grown into the industry and what your kind of musical industry morals are in a way, and what you've grown up with and who you know. And I mean, I'm a young agent. I was a promoter. I like to get to know as many different people as possible and work with as many different people. I've got quite a diverse roster, so it's important for me to work with, you know, the young promoters, the electronic promoters, you know, people that do different things. So I like to keep quite a wide spread. I like to be everyone's friend. I like everyone to work with me, and vice versa.
Jason's a very nice guy.
But personally, I think it's important. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you thinking fresh, and especially Steve has maybe more established bands than the three of us, and been doing it a bit longer. And I think we're still finding our feet, and would probably, I don't want to speak on behalf of you two, but prefer working with the young promoters because we're all in a similar situation. We're all starting out, and we kind of are all into the same sort of music, maybe, and all enthusiastic. And so, no, I don't work with one promoter. I work with as many as I can, because I think there's no set way of doing anything now in music. You have to keep trying new things, and so in a roundabout way. Right.
Can I ask you a question about each of you? Just, you know, I'll ask the question and you can kind of think of it. You know, how many bands are on your roster? How many bands do you work with? You know, I mean, just give me a number. Like how many? Like just so people get an idea how many bands you actually are looking after.
I do about 10 to 15.
10, 15.
Yeah, 10x.
10x. Jason?
About 40.
40.
Probably between about 40 and 50. Yeah.
Okay. Holy Jesus! How? Okay. You're all still actively looking for bands, because it's like it's about the Kerching factor. You need to get your commissions in. How the fuck do you book out 40 bands? Is it the case of you look at the calendars and kind of realize they're not going to be touring, or is there like 25 Jason Edwards at 13?
I don't have much of a life outside of my job. I work very hard and very long hours, but you know, you have 40 bands on your roster. Maybe 20 of them are active. And that's how you manage your time, really. Not everyone is always touring.
Yeah.
I have quite a lot of American bands as well who will only come over once or twice a year. So actually, it sounds like a very daunting number. It sounds like a lot of people, and that maybe, you know, I get questions from bands sometimes. So are you spreading yourself too thin? Are we going to get attention from you? It's like, well,
you look 5 years older than you did last year.
Thanks. Very charming. You make the time for the bands that you like, I think. I think, you know, there's quite a lot of people. It's a big roster. Yeah. Steve and I have quite big rosters, I think.
It's impressive in many ways, but like I suppose I'm kind of like looking at it from the point of view of a new band. You know, if I was a new band, are you looking at? Do you think new bands should look at kind of like how you've done with your past bands, or should it look at like the two lads at the end who've only got 10 or 15 bands, or is it a case of they look at the lads at the end of 10 or 15 bands, go, they're just lazy sods, and these lads are going to work harder for me? I'm being devil's advocate here now. Please don't hold it against me.
I don't really know. It's also, every agent is so different. Everyone works in a completely different way. Some people are comfortable, you know, maybe only having a couple of bands that are active per year and really, really focusing on making sure everything is absolutely perfect and being happy with that. I completely have ADHD, and I want to just keep signing stuff and working with the music that I like. I find it very hard now to just listen to something and think, oh, that's a nice record. I go, that's a nice record, I want to sign it, I want to work with it, I want to help that band. But that's how I sell myself too. I'm enthusiastic. I don't think I let any band slip just because I have a lot of them. They all get a bit of love, you know. But it's just, we all work very differently, really differently.
I don't think it's always clear how many, I mean, it depends on the agency website, how many bands, like, I mean, on the 13 website, it's all the list of the bands that all the agency work. It's not clear that Jason does 40 of them or anything. I think yeah, if a band would go to Jason, like how many bands, like what bands do you work with? He's not going to sit there and list all 40. Yeah. I just think, yeah, it just depends.
It also, to me, it also just shouldn't matter. It's like if the agent's a good agent, whether he's got one band or 100 bands, they're still a good agent, you know, and they'll still do a good job for you. So I think the most, not in terms of looking at roster size, but as a band looking at agents, I do think you have to get to know what bands the agent represents when you're approaching them and making sure that you kind of fit in with what they do. And it's not to say that we all only look after one particular sort of band, but you do get a feel for what that agent is more, you know, like if you're a metal band and you approach me, you're talking completely to the wrong person, you know. So I think you have to pay attention to that and yeah, do the research.
All of you talked earlier on in some degree or other about like the scouting involved and the fact that you're kind of like substitutes for A&R people. You know, I remember from my days working in A&R that the worst room in the building used to be the room where all the demos, all the unsolicited demos were stored. You obviously get unsolicited demos in because you're all the directories. Have you ever taken on a band from an unsolicited demo?
No. No. That's the short answer.
No.
I'm just trying to remember exactly how I found out about editors. Actually, that was pretty much unsolicited at the time, and I think I just and there was another band that I just had a CD on the desk once, which was good. So occasionally, but very, very rarely.
Yeah, yeah. So that would tie in with like the traditional A&R route. That like you've got your contacts out there. There's people you're touching in with all the time. There's local promoters. There's band managers. You've got your networks already done. So for any band out there, they need to plug into those networks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you need people talking about it. Like I said before, you don't want to be like just a band out of the blue coming along and saying, "We want you to be our agent," because you've got no background, they don't know who I am, like they don't know what I'm like, so they don't know my ways. So yeah, I mean, if a band seems to want to go into a relationship with someone that they've never met, don't know what they're like and how they work, then it's probably a bad idea. They've probably made a few similar mistakes along the way that, yeah, are going to lead to them not actually getting anywhere.
Yeah. It's almost like, you know, bands already have to be doing the work, you know what I mean? They have to be kind of like, already showing like that they can actually do it, that they're sustainable, that they're self-sufficient, and they've got enough people before you're going to take attention, because that's when you're going to notice them.
Yeah, I mean, I think now, because there's so many bands out there, like, there's more than ever, I probably think. I don't know if that statistic is true, but I would think there are. You have to really, everyone wants an agent. I think if you're in a band, you want to have an agent, but you really have to kind of earn having an agent now, I think. It's not a case of being like, right, we need an agent now, we're going to hire you. I think you really have to, yeah, prove your worth, have people talking about you, put the work in, and then you get one of us. But then also it means that we can then do our job properly for you. Yeah.
Just move it on a bit, you know, I suppose moving on to kind of like, more kind of macro issues, you know. I mean, we talked earlier on about how important your role has become, you know, the fact that you've gone from maybe number 5 on someone's team to be number 1. You're now the Messis of everyone's ideal team, you know, because you're the ones bringing in the money. From your point of view, you know, talk a bit maybe about, you know, Steve, about how the festival thing has changed in the last couple of years. I mean, from here in Ireland, we've seen the festivals kind of, the thing grow over the last 10 years. I do an annual census online about how many festivals in Ireland. It's grown from like something like 55 4 or 5 years ago to about 109 now. You know, it really has grown. Maybe it fills in a bit like, I mean, how the agents, have the agents found that the festivals just to be a gold mine, or is it a case that you found yourself being burned somewhere along the line as well, that you put acts onto festivals where the money hasn't happened, or it's been a bad experience to the band, and how you gauge how festivals are working, how they're not working?
I think the festivals thing's certainly got a lot more complicated, with a lot more festivals than there were when I first started. The hardest thing is, obviously, normally when you take on a band, talk to a band, they want to play, you know, supports, festivals, and the hardest thing, you know, timing of when you play certain festivals is really important. And the hardest thing to do is to turn around to a band and say, no, you shouldn't play Glastonbury next year, you shouldn't play Reading or Leeds or Oxygen. You should play it the year when your album's out, when you've got something to promote. And it's interesting because it's quite, you know, so many bands going for slots. You often don't get it 2 years in a row. Although during the speed meeting, it was interesting to find out there was a couple of bands whose first show ever in Ireland were at Electric Picnic and things like that, which took me completely by surprise, actually. And you know, well done for them getting those slots. But ironically, in reverse of what I just said, that gave them a story to talk about right from the start. So sometimes it works playing early. You also need to have something lined up. You know, what you don't want to do is have your album tour and you've played every festival. So, you know, having a strategy across the summer is really important, I think.
I mean, from your point of view, Andy, like, I mean, the bands you mentioned earlier on, like Ice Age and Savages, I mean, they would have both played festivals this summer, wouldn't they? Or in the last couple of years. Like, in terms of like picking out the right festivals for the bands to play, is that something, you know, you went to the bands with, or do they come to you kind of going, okay, well, actually, we want to do Field Day, or we want to do, you know, like something like that? Did they know what they wanted, or was it a case of you had to advise them?
I think with an act like Ice Age, I mean, they're a punk band, you know, and they're not active. To be fair, they're not actively trying to be a popular band. You know, it's the music they play is very discordant. It's very.
They're the most amazing band I've seen this year.
Thank you very much.
I saw on the Vera at your side at the start of the year. It's the first time I've been to a gig in ages where I took 3 steps backwards.
Yeah, you want to stay away from Elias when he's swinging around, but I think, you know, you have to be very careful with that kind of thing as well. You know, with any act that you put onto a festival, because of the way that your artist is portrayed by a particular festival. Like, if you're an artist that's, you know, trying to become, say, it's your album tour now, and you're trying to appear like develop like an act that's going to be, you know, playing sort of 2,000 cap venues, I don't think you'd want to be playing a festival that's maybe in, like, I don't know, Boyne Regis or some tiny, like, festival that I think it would, I mean, despite the fact you might headline and get a load of money for it, I think it may perhaps put you in perhaps give off the wrong image that you're playing those kind of small festivals, and thus some festival promoters might not book you. But at the same time, you know, it's variable. Some promoters will be like, you know, it could be that they're going to play anyway. But I mean, with Ice Age, I think, you know, they're not really, as I say, not actively trying to go out and play festivals. I think we had offers for Field Day, and we did Reading and Leeds this year as well, festival. And that was me, you know, actively going to the promoters saying, you know, I'd like them to play this year. And I think, obviously, the promoters wanted to have them on, otherwise they wouldn't have booked them. But yeah, it was more in that case, it was more me advising them on what they wanted to play rather than the act saying, oh, we really want to do this, we want to do that.
I think you're asking as well, because there's so many now, how do you choose the right one? And is there a risk? So I think it helps if your agent is booking you for festivals that he or she has been to and knows and can speak of from experience.
Yeah,
that helps.
I know for following you on your Twitter feed that you seem to be at a festival every single night.
Yes, which it's very hard work, very difficult, but it is important. It's a big part of our job. You can't be like, oh, hey, Specs, there's a great festival in Romania that I really think you should go and play. It's like, well, you have to, you know, you can't just book people for random things all the time, although the offers might be good. And especially now you know, you'll have heard stories about a lot of festivals folding and having financial trouble. And it is a big risk you take with booking a band on a festival, and you just have to be smart and take an educated risk, I guess, in those scenarios. And we've had it 2 or 3 times this summer where you've booked a band when it gets to the point where the festival is due the deposit, there's issues, and the festival cancels and there's no money, you know, for anyone, and it's tragic for the band, it's tragic for the festival more importantly, but it's kind of unavoidable. It's tragic
for you as well, because I mean, it's kind of, well, you're the guy who sent us to that festival in Romania.
Well, it's kind of, yeah, exactly, but it's also, we're the ones driving this industry, so, and you know, asking these smaller festivals for big massive fees and stuff, and we're kind of part of the problem in a way.
Yeah, that's
so we have to kind of collectively just be a bit more sensible, I think, now. And
that's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up, actually, Jason. I mean, that is your fees, you know, and the fact that that's how you make money, you know. But the thing is, like say, Steve, maybe you can answer this one. Like, do you think, you know, that the fees you're asking for festival shows in many ways are kind of like, you know, you're taking the piss in a way, that like in asking for these big fees, and like all these festivals are trying to survive, and like obviously you kind of want to get the best money possible for your act, because that's how they're going to survive. So like, where's going to be the happy medium? I mean, like I'm talking about on the big level, like, I mean, when we got like people like Live Nation coming in, block booking places for the likes of Madonna and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Lady Gaga, for example, and even down to the smaller festivals, because there's so many festivals now competing for these acts. Where where's the happy medium going to come from in terms of fees?
It varies from band to band. I've got some bands who are happy if they just cover their costs to do festivals. I've got some bands who see it as the way they make their money and they want as much as possible. I've got some who want to put on the most amazing show and production they can and need the fee to cover the production. And, you know, that level of a band going from there to there, often the increase in production is the thing that helps them go to the next level. Like, you know, I remember back in the day, a lot of people talked about Muse. They talked as much about the lighting and production as they did about the band's music. But now, obviously, that bit helped them get to the next level. It's harder for developing bands nowadays with lack of label tour support. But, you know, 5-10 years ago, a label would probably help tour support some of the festivals across the summer to help build the band. And now, most of the time, that money's not there. So naturally, even the smaller band, you have to ask for higher fees than you used to. Otherwise, the bands can't afford to play the shows. So it's a mix, really.
Yeah, I think bands look at, with festivals, they look at the sort of value they're getting from the festival. It's not just about fee. It's about, like, say, if they did like Reading or Leeds or Glastonbury, they're going to get great coverage. They're going to be online. They're going to be like videos of them playing live, which is going to help them in so many different ways. And compared to something like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 festival in Shoreditch, where it's just like it'll get a mention in Stool Pigeon or something like that, where it's not.
You get the vibes.
Yeah.
Okay, which of the newer festivals do you rate as agents? Europe-wise. I mean, what festivals do you think, like, that's good exposure for a new band? You know, I mean, be it like something like Oyafest, be it something like Eurosonic. I mean, what festivals do you kind of go, okay, that's one I really think a new act should definitely do or try to do?
I'd definitely say Eurosonic. It's got every agent, every promoter, every label all goes out to Eurosonic every year, and I mean, I don't think they're at the level where they offer. Like they are like sending the best bands in Europe out. I think you'll go there and you'll see maybe 4 or 5 bands that you want to see, but it's getting there. I think it's a really good one to do.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I mean, I've had more reaction to bands playing Eurosonic in their developing career than any other event, really.
Do you agree? Would you agree with that as well?
Yeah. I mean, you know, Eurosonic is a fantastic festival, and obviously, as Nick says, you know, it's every festival promoter in Europe. I think, you know, in the UK, festivals like Great Escape are also excellent. You know, like Liverpool Sound City or any of the, you know, further north ones. A lot of new small festivals as well. You know, in a similar vein, they're not obviously aimed at industry, but stuff like Live at Leeds or, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 festivals. It's all new acts. You know what I mean? And there's some great bands that play at those festivals, and I think that they all do a fantastic job at, you know, getting as many bands as they do for a really low ticket price as well.
I think with the smaller festivals like the industry festivals, I think once you have a reputation like Eurosonic, there's not much pressure to sell any tickets because it's gonna be full every year. Like Liverpool Sound City has the sort of level of acts that are going to sell tickets to the general public, and you get scousers like packing out the venue.
It's interesting the way Eurosonic's kind of gone up in all the agents' estimation, you know, because I mean, like, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't on UK agents' radar at all, and last year, I mean, Jesus, like I couldn't move for you, you know, you were everywhere.
I think it's just incredibly well organised. Bands go on time, and their A&R picking of bands. You know, historically, you look back and you can list half a dozen bands at least each year who've gone on to, maybe not in UK or Ireland, but gone on to have some sort of career in mainland Europe. Yeah.
Just moving on from the festivals, kind of is a question that came up yesterday. Someone asked a really good question from the audience yesterday during the management panel about, you know, when bands are touring a lot, you know, that fatigue sets in. You know, like we're giving an example that if a band's coming to Ireland, a UK band or international band coming to Ireland, they may well visit here 4 times. They'll do a club show at the start of the year. They'll come back and do a festival show. They'll do a sponsor show, and then they'll do the end of the year Christmas present show. You know, as agents, you know, obviously you want your band touring a lot. You know, how do you kind of like, I mean, balance that one between the fact that the fatigue may be setting in, the audience may have seen the band once and they're not going to see him again, versus the fact that, well, you keep going. I mean, has there been times when you've put bands on tour where there's not really a demand for it?
Yeah. Story of my life. No. So I have a very successful touring history. Shut up, Jason. It depends on the band. I'd by and large like to implement a kind of less is more strategy on most of my acts, because I think that you can have higher impact on your longer term career by doing fewer shows. You increase your value, especially now when there are so many tours, so many bands, so many venues, promoters, agents. I think if you're just out there touring all the time, you know, that isn't the way necessarily to do it anymore. But in saying that, I have one band on my roster that the way we've made them successful this year is by, I think they've done 3 or 4 tours this year, and we've got them to a point now where they'll, you know, sell 2,000 tickets in London. And if we'd done the less is more thing with them, it maybe wouldn't have worked quite the same. But I think you have to be very, you know, the whole thing of doing the toilet tours and this, it doesn't really have an effect so much anymore. You have to be very selective and picky with what you do.
Underplaying as well can be quite useful. Yeah. I mean, say for an artist, we'll have a load of buzz and we'll probably do, you know, 700 tickets, maybe not all in one go, but if you put them into a 500 cap venue, that if they were going to sell those tickets over a long period of time, rather than sell them all out instantly, if you underplay, then, you know, you give that perception of a hot ticket, and the next time they come round, there's still going to be demand there for them, even if the album may have been out for, you know, a year or so.
I think with everything, it just depends on what the band is, and like with Spectre, I mean, with every tour, there's always something new going on. Yeah. There's, you know, more people. Yeah. There's like another reason for people to go to shows. I think if a band hasn't got anything on and they see touring as like the only option they've got to kind of, well, that's the thing that they're doing. Like that's what's going on with touring. That's gonna just, I mean, the audience will perish, and yeah, you get less and less people every time.
I think it's just there's a lot of focus, maybe too much at the minute, on the short-term plan and things being successful now. And what a lot of people forget is that the idea with the band that you work with, ideally you want them to have a 10, 15, 20, 40-year career. So you have to plan longer, and that probably means, you know, a lot of touring, but over a much longer period of time, which I think is a really important thing to you know, that kind of having a bit of patience and spreading your tour plans very important.
I can imagine it's very hard when you're talking to Steve, to like, I mean, managers, to make them realise about that, to realise about having patience and realising that it is a long-term tour, that it is a long-term thing. I mean, it strikes me that sometimes, you know, there's pressure from the band and the manager to just get out there and keep it going right now in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, there's one band I've got particularly that their life is touring, and that's all they do, that's how they live. From the merch income and stuff, and it's got to the point, you know, there's 1 year I told them not, you know, it takes some guts to tell the band not to come, because there's always some other agent who will book the tour. But equally, we missed a year, and their business was good, then they wanted to come back again, and the business isn't quite so good, because at the moment I think it's going back to the same cities too often. You know, people still want to go out and see acts. They still want to see the bands they like, but probably they'll go and see them once on an album or at a festival, and then they'll use the money they do still have in their pocket to see another act, rather than see the same one 6 months after they've last seen them. Yeah. I think so.
We've kind of focused, I suppose, on a lot of the kind of positive stuff about bands building themselves up and building up tour by tour, against having hot bands and all that. Let's talk a bit about the other side. You know, I mean, how, like, obviously, at some stage you're going to have to give a band bad news that tour dates are being cancelled because of lack of ticket sales, lack of things like that. You know, is there any easy way of breaking that news to the band, or is the case, going back to what you said there, Steve, in a way that, like, I mean, if you're giving the band some bad news and you're putting out the unforeseen circumstances press release, the infamous unforeseen circumstances press release, that, you know, they will kind of go, well, fuck you, I'll go to someone else instead. It's like, I mean, you're not working hard enough for me. I'm going to move from Coda or Primary, and I'm going to go to 13 instead, become Jason's 105th band.
I think, like, from the moment you take on a band, it's all about managing their expectations, and so, like, they need to understand where you're coming from on everything that you do live. So if you're saying it's not right to tour now, then they go, okay, fair enough, like, point taken.
And that's why you're the agent as well. Like, you know, it's your job to maintain that. And you know, if they're not going to listen to you, then
well, I mean, what about the relationship then with promoters when that comes to this? You know, I mean, like, are there times when you find yourself on the phone just roaring, shouting at the local promoter? Oh, hang on a second. None of you look after Bombay Bicycle Club. Sorry about that.
Jason wants to be everyone's friend, so it's
exactly. I sold one ticket, that's fine. I had it really recently, actually, where I had a show that wasn't selling too well, and it didn't make sense that it wasn't selling well. It was for a band that were on the rise, had done 500 tickets at their last London gig, so we thought, right, let's move it up to 1,000 capacity, see how we get on, and it had done comparatively much poorer ticket sales. So I got on the phone to the promoter and was like, right, is everything all right with the show? Are you worried? He's like, not so sure. And then I was like, wait a minute, have you printed posters? What have you done to promote the gig so far? So, I've just been really worried about it, so I haven't really done anything. I was like, well, why don't you make a flyer, get a poster out, and promote the bloody gig? And then, I think...
Would you work with that promoter again?
There was a lapse in his focus, let's say. But again, I want to be everyone's friend, so of course. But I think it isn't our job to sell the tickets on a tour. So it isn't fair for a band to, if they have a poor selling tour, to blame it on us necessarily, unless we have booked it with the wrong promoters who are all doing a shit job. But we do have to look after the tours, make sure that the promoters are doing their job of promoting a show, and sometimes that does involve shouting a bit, but we wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't doing that.
Yeah, I think with certain promoters, it's like, if a show's not selling well, just batten down the hatches, don't spend another penny on promoting it, let's just get through this. And then obviously as agents, we don't really want to work with those kind of promoters. We want the ones who are going to say, it's not selling well, we're going to have to do something about this, make sure it's a good gig.
Where sometimes everyone thinks something's going to do really well, nothing sells well, even though everyone's doing a good job, and then that's where you have that conversation where, okay, the tour's not selling well, guys, and the follow-on isn't, let's do it later, it's maybe you should stop. It isn't ever going to work. And I think that's happening more and more often because, again, there's more and more bands out there.
Cool.
And
Cool. Before we throw it out to the audience some questions, because I'm sure there's some questions out there, maybe let's kind of do a bit of kind of futurescaping, because we've been doing this every panel, like, what's going to be, future, it's a great word, I know, it's another meta word. 10 years ago, you were kind of like number 5, and you're now going up to number 1. Maybe kind of like, where do you see things being in 10 years' time from your point of view? Where Nick, will the agents be in 10 years' time? Will you still be kind of like booking loads of bands? Will you kind of moved out? Will your roster now have reached 4 figures? Will festivals still be as important? Maybe just kind of like do a bit of, no one's going to hold you to this, but like, where you think, from your experience, your job will be in 4 years' time, or 10 years' time?
Hopefully still in place. I mean, no one really knows. I mean, the trend has been in the last few years that bands are getting agents earlier and earlier, but I think it's kind of got to the point where agents are kind of mindful of that and maybe leaving a band to do like a few more shows. There aren't as many bands being taken on before they've done a gig, I think. And yeah, I think maybe it'll sort of start to go backward and people will take the time more, because like the last thing you want for a band on your roster is for you to not have enough time to actually work them. Like you want your agent to be putting everything into promoting them, and I think maybe bands will get wise to that. And yeah.
What do you think, Andy? Where do you think Kings will be in 10 years' time?
Well, I mean, it's there's so many different variables, but at the same time, there's you look at promoters and some of the ticketing systems that they're bringing in, and some of the ways that they're booking new artists. It could be that an agent might not even have a job in 10 years because there's so many different new forms of people, new methods of booking coming in, whereas promoters might just end up getting rid of the middleman, but obviously that won't help. That won't happen.
Yeah, Steve, maybe take that point up as you kind of look at 10 years from now, and maybe talk a bit about Live Nation, and like I know you're not involved, but all of you know Live Nation and work with Live Nation, fear Live Nation and hate Live Nation and love Live Nation, but like it seems to me there's been a bit of kind of like recalibration by Live Nation in recent times. They seem to be kind of realizing that the American model just doesn't fit over here. The one-size-fits-all model doesn't fit over here, and they're going to have to do different things. Where do you see that Live Nation being as big a kind of a monster on the scene in 10 years' time?
I think it literally depends on how the market is between now and then, and whether a lot of the things they're involved with, festivals and that, are quite high budget, and whether they can sustain that is another question. I think, like any promoter, there's good promoters and not so good promoters in their organisations. So I think there's a few other realignments probably about to take place in the marketplace with some of their competitors, which will either make them stronger, or whatever comes out of those alignments may give them ironically increased competition, because some of their competition will need to be leaner and meaner and may pull some business around because of that.
Are we talking AG or is...
That might be one of them, and there's a couple of other situations about to happen. So it's hard to answer. I mean, obviously the Live Nation thing is across the world, which is something they can increasingly offer to an act that they believe in, is opportunities in other countries, which a lot of companies can't at the moment. Although at the moment they limit that to mainly established large acts. But if they so wish to get in earlier and find an act that they champion, like say a Savages or something, they may offer them something internationally. I mean, that was talked about a few years ago, but they haven't really fully gone down that route. And if they did, it'd be quite kind of, if they went to you and said, or direct to the act and said, we can break you around the world,
that's what I was.
It would cloud things a bit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, certainly, and I think also on that respect, with companies like Live Nation, or say I don't know, Metropolis or someone like that, where before you had labels giving tour support to artists because they had so much money, because people bought CDs, where now labels don't have much money. I think that's another new thing that might come in, where promoters are supporting artists, to American artists perhaps, for them to pay to come over to put tour support in or something like that, to make it make touring over here valid and financially possible. But again, that's another way, that's just one of the models that are coming in, and some promoters are doing it already, but it's not so tried at the moment, I don't think.
Jason, what do you see for 10 years from now?
I think everything's going to streamline. I would like to think there's going to be just less of everything, but in a positive way.
You're calling for a cull of bands?
I do go on a rant in the office sometimes about how I wish we could just cull off a few, but there'll be fewer festivals, I think, is one big thing. There'll be a focus. The good festivals will remain, and there will be fewer of the kind of medium-sized ones. I think it will just kind of hone down in that. I think there will also be more collaboration between promoters, agents, everything, to fund their bands. I think we are going to become the primary kind of support group, really, for everything is going to be live driven. That's how I really do see things going, and that's it, really. It's kind of, I don't know, it's all very uncertain just now, and it could either go back to records being the prominent thing, but who knows, though? Really, who knows? But I personally just think everything's going to streamline, and there'll be more. I think there'll be a few companies kind of joining forces to offer different services to bands. I do agree with what you're saying about the middleman being cut out, but not it kind of being everyone working together a bit more, as opposed to people losing jobs and stuff. But I think that's where it's going.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay, great. So we've got some time for questions. We've got a microphone in the audience, so if you've got a question, just put your hand up and we get the microphone to you. I'm sure there's some questions from that, because we covered a lot of ground, but I'm sure there's other ground to be covered. Maybe some questions we haven't touched on.
Hello. I have a question about the inner workings of agencies.
Could you use a favour? Because we can't.
Sorry, Jim.
Oh, Alexis, how's it going?
Hello.
Sorry, it's Alexis, band manager at Label. Sorry, we're in a situation where we're looking out here, and again, it's like the witness protection scheme. We honestly have a fucking clue.
I like it like that. That's better. Especially the question.
Alexis from Delphi. We cut corners, and Deaf Joe.
And I wanted to ask about the inner workings of agencies. So. Are the agencies in London, for example, quite varied in how they operate in terms of the integration between agents, and whether they operate independently of each other under a loose umbrella, or whether they're in a very integrated team? And if they are very varied in how they operate, should that matter to artists and managers in terms of what will work for them?
I think every agency is different, because it's all like different individuals grouped together, and I think it should matter to artists. I think you have to look at the company as a whole if you're making if it's a big decision. I mean, obviously for some bands they just want an agent, but I think if it's a critical thing, then they do need to look at the company, look how they bring up their artists, and yeah, I think it's different.
I think at Coda, like it's a very team-based agency. I think I'm not sure, you know, exactly how the other agencies are operating. Obviously, everybody does it for themselves, but I think Coda is one of the few agencies where everything is very close-knit, and I think, you know, we're a very young agency, but at the same time we've come up really quickly because of the fact that we all work together and we all share each other's thoughts, each other's tips, and you know, offer advice to each other. And I think that's, you know, a very valuable way of working. I think that's, you know, that's why we're able to come up so quickly.
Yeah, I think every agency definitely has its own personality, and I think everyone would agree that they work collaboratively and that they work as a team, but maybe some follow that more than others. Some are maybe more individually led and some are more team led. I mean, with 13 we're 3 agents working in the same room together, so we're very kind of all in it together. But, you know, we're staff-wise, I think the smallest one out there. You know, you guys all have about 10, 15 agents at the company. So
3 of you?
Just 3 agents, yeah.
What about ITB, Steve? Would it be along similar lines?
Yeah, definitely.
You all HR?
No, we get on very well together, try and help each other. You know, we have a lot of festival headline acts, which we try and help with our other acts. I mean, one of the things I like, and actually is relevant about everybody on this panel's companies, is that none of us have American offices where we are coerced or to give push an act to a certain American agent in the same company that might not even be into the act, but just to keep the act within the company. And I believe, you know, a manager and an act having, you know, if you've got one agent who looks after the rest of the world, one agent at a different company who looks after America and Canada, you've got 2 databases, 2 sets of skills and stuff, and a bigger range of options open to the act, I think. Yeah. So
I think one of the biggest selling points of all of our agencies is that if a band comes to you or you go to a band, then that you are the person who's going to be their agent. It's not going to be sort of passed along to someone in the office. You're their go-to guy.
I think that's as well, you know, you work hard to get that act yourself rather than, you know, another agent, you then getting offered that band. You know, you've worked hard to get that band onto your roster, so at the same time you're going to put the effort in to make sure that it works for you.
Cool. Okay, next question. 2 here in the front.
Hi, I was just wondering how much of an influence the individuals in a band have on your decision to work with them. Like, do you ever work with people you don't like at all, but they're obviously really good and hot, or if they're just individuals that you think they're great, would you be more inclined to work with them?
No, I think if they're nice people, then you want to work harder for them to sort of, because you're making, like, it's their life really that you're dealing with, and if it's someone who you don't get along with, then you kind of, the thought of them coming into town and doing a gig would be quite daunting. Like, you don't want to go and hang out with them. But yeah, I think it's definitely important.
I totally agree. I mean, often, well, primarily, you know, apart from the music of the act and the team around it, you know, I try and find out, you know, a bit about the management, a bit about the artists as individuals before you actually sign the act, because you need to go into it with your eyes open. And you know, sometimes you hear some stories, but at least you're prepared for when those, you know, when something rears its head, really.
Yeah. Cool. Another question here, Garrett in front row.
Hi, I wanted to ask you this yesterday, but I thought it'd be better to ask you guys today, because you kind of have a lot to do with the channels of the artist being discovered. How does this EMI buyout from Universal affect you guys? Does it affect you at all? Because it's been made out to be on AIM and Merlin to be this huge thing, and the independent sector is, like, I know that Music Indie makes a big point that this buyout could make things a lot worse. But does that affect you guys at all? I mean, or is that just totally different kettle of fish?
In reality, at the moment, I don't think so. What there is a danger is, and again, this is where strong management's needed, I believe, is certain labels are tending to try and enter clauses in contracts that insist that the label or has the right of choice of promoter or right of choice of agent or specific agents. And one of the companies you mentioned, I know some stories about, so that's probably going to become a stronger issue, which again, you know, at the end of the day, you just need to make sure you have a strong manager and a strong lawyer who, when you do the deal, puts it as much in favour of the artist as possible.
Yeah, I mean it's a good question, because I mean that there are acts at the moment, say on EMI, who are on the auction block who haven't 360 deals. You know, they're kind of going like, well, you know, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? And your kind of advice to them would probably be to kind of stay well clear of stuff like that if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for new bands coming, certainly bands rather than pop acts, like I think it's much more favourable nowadays to go with an independent who's going to like properly look after you, like something like Domino have never dropped an act. Like that's going to look like, and you have like labels like Mercury who have a band and they took the most sort of mainstream single, put it out, if it doesn't work, and they drop it. Yeah. I think certainly for, I mean, I mostly work with bands. I think I would advise them all to sort of steer clear of that and yeah, make as much money as they can from the label without, you know, selling the souls.
I think unless the offer's, you know, too good to be true, then a manager will just tell them to sling it. You know what I mean? It's not. No one's gonna, I don't think, be that enthused to want to, you know, for a label to have a say over what the agent's going to do, because it's, you know, that's the label. It's not. They don't know the live plot of the artist.
It's almost as if, like, you know, you've got kind of two different landscapes. You know, I mean, obviously the EMI Universal merger is playing out in one big kind of landscape. But what we're talking about here, you know, where you're coming from in terms of the agents and the bands you work with, I mean, that record side of things and that kind of like coming together of two old dinosaurs doesn't really mean that much, really. Cool. Next question. Time for one more question, I think. Just back row here.
Hi, I just want to ask you, as regards the DIY scene, with indie labels in particular in Ireland, have you ever kind of come across any bands from, say, Delphi or Out on a Limb or the Richter Collective, which are obviously no longer, but have you ever kind of delved into that area to kind of discover your next big thing that you could take to another level?
I mean, bands who would have been, just so you can fill in, bands who would, like on the labels the ladies mentioned, would have been the likes of, I saw Watch From Afar on Richter Collective, We Cut Corners on Delphi, help me out here, I'm kind of blanking here. Abby Shank, anyone else? Yep.
I think it always just comes down to whether the band's good or not. Like, really, I mean, you can't take on a whole scene on your roster. I think if the band's good enough, then we'll look at it. Like, it's not.
I think it's also kind of worth pointing out as well. I mean, a lot of those labels you just mentioned, and that scene is very local. They haven't moved out. They haven't gone out. They've stayed local.
Kind of have, when you look at the Sargent House and collaboration.
Yeah.
You know, they're in America now, and so Watch From Afar at
Yeah, I got to know the Richter Collective through that because I did quite a bit of work with Sargent House 2-3 years ago. So yeah, I've had a bit of experience with them. But as Nick says, you kind of find bands from anywhere just now, don't you? It doesn't really matter where they're from, but yeah, I don't know.
You know, it doesn't matter where bands are from. Ice Age being a case in point, you know.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. I was just saying, like, I think it's the same with any label or artist that, you know, you might have an artist that's on a certain label or like a small label like Richter Collective or something like that, and you'll then go on to look at the other artists on their roster just because you like that artist. I think that's, you know, and that's the way people used to buy records, because of, you know, the other artists that label represented.
I think you touched upon something quite interesting though with the local comment. It's fantastic for a city like Dublin to have a scene and to have DIY labels and people doing everything independently, and you know, that's great, but you have to take that and try and take it elsewhere, make it not local, make it a global thing.
There's also kind of like something as well, I'm sorry, kind of cross Jason, it's also something that kind of is coming up again and again at the moment, that, you know, that everyone's looking for something and their search is now global. Yeah. You know, if something's happening, you're going to find out about it. You know, I mean, like it's kind of funny. You know, there's a lot of A&R people suddenly back on my radar again, and I was trying to wonder why. And they're checking through playlists of radio shows like everywhere. Like I was talking to someone yesterday who's keeping tabs on the Northern Ireland scene, the new Northern Ireland bands, by looking at the DJs and podcasters up there and seeing what's coming out. If something's happening, people are checking it out, and if they're hearing about it, it's really, really interesting. So it's not a case anymore that, yeah, it's a local scene, but you know, people are keeping tabs on it all the same from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, do we, Angela? One last question? We don't. Two questions, okay.
Kind of follows on from Danielle's question. Like, I think it was more like Ireland is better than a lot of countries at the moment. It just is. Like,
well, look, hey, Enda Kenny's on the cover of Time. We're the best, man. Celtic comeback.
How high is Ireland on your radar? Like, I've been in other countries. Just like Spain is shit. There's nothing happening. There's no live scene in the south of Spain. All over Ireland there is. So, how high is Ireland on your radar?
I'll stand up for the south of Spain. There's a great live scene in the south of Spain. Great.
If you're in the flamenco, maybe.
No. Really good punk scene in Almeria at the moment. It hasn't been washed away in the floods. But how high is Ireland on your radar?
I think it's always going to be fairly high up because it's right next door to the rest of the UK. But I also don't think it's very important to think about things on a like per country basis. I don't really care. It's like,
the internet now is worldwide, isn't it? So why would, as an example, Ice Age, it's a Danish band. I mean, yeah, fair enough. There was heat about them, there was a buzz about them, but at the same time, you can look at it's from any country. It's going to be just because it's I wouldn't say it's specific to each country. Just go online and listen to some music if you like it, then maybe sign it.
As Nick says, in reality, it doesn't matter where a band comes from as long as they're good enough. But historically, Ireland's had an amazing amount of bands and singers come through it that have done well and been great, I think. So certainly always looking.
I mean, Ireland, it really does punch above its weight, and also in ways often people in the room and the scene don't even realise. I mean, one of the biggest publishing deals and the biggest record deals I've heard of in months were both signed with Irish acts this week. I mean, we are punching way above our weight, Angela, have you one question before we finish?
Yeah, and also they're all here, so they obviously do like the Irish scene. I'm just saying, standing up for you. I have a question that we're coming across with smaller festivals here, and people like Castlepalooza and Independence. If you're advising an act, you're an agent for an act, and there's an opportunity and a fee for a large festival, say Oxygen or Electric Picnic. And then also the bookers, the indie bookers who've created a really nice scene, say at Castlepalooza or Independence, are offering maybe a smaller fee, but the act headline the small festival. It's a really good festival. It's a cottage industry. They spend 6 months promoting the band, or you're on a bill with 172 bands on Oxygen. What would your advice be to your act in that situation? Would you say do Castlepalooza and have it be all about you, or would you... Politically, what do you have to do in that situation?
It's again completely dependent on the band and what they need to get out of a festival. As Nick was saying, if they need to get the massive national exposure and be on all the marketing and maybe get a bit of TV or then that will come into it. But it depends on the band and the artist, and where some bands want to keep integrity and only do independent festivals, and of course it'd be better for them to headline and stuff, but some just want to be next to the Killers or something on, they want to be on those bills. I think it's all case by case. I'd much rather my bands went and played to a festival where people were actually there for the music and were interested. And
have you ever had a situation where, like, a band has come back to you after playing one of the Uber festivals, like Electric Picnic or Oxygen, when they've kind of turned down an offer for the other festival, and Jay just went like, for fuck's sake, we should have done that other festival. We played to 300 people while Jay-Z was playing to 30,000 on a stage.
Yeah, totally, but they all still want to be on that festival's poster, and that's what it comes down to. They want to be on the lineup and add it to the CV, because even if they play to 5 people at something like Oxygen, they can say, well, we played Oxygen. Yeah. That's what it's all about, really, I think. With most bands, not always.
I think, again, there's a strategy that if you're looking long term with an act, that you can fit both in. One this year, one next year. I had editors play Independence, went great for them. Doesn't mean they can't play Oxygen next time Oxygen runs, and doesn't mean they can't go back and play Independence again.
Yeah, I think as well, like with festivals like Oxygen and B Festival, like bands. Like they've not grown up going to those gigs, but they have had some like Radio 1 exposure, so they do have to. I think they're quite mindful of the fact that they do have to go and do them. It's not just. It's like it's part of the the stages that they have to do. They have to go through. But yeah, they would much rather do like small festivals where they're headlining. It's all about them. But yeah, it's just something that you got to do really for the exposure.
Cool. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Andy, Nick, Jason, and Steve. Thanks, Jamie.